Pitch Perfect 2, quickie review. 7.7 out of 10. If you're looking for fun characters, fun songs, and laughs, it's a good film. But at the end of the day, it has a relatively weak narrative and a lot of narrative gaps. If you liked Pitch Perfect 1, it's a good fun movie, but at the end of the day, don't expect a strong story. The main problem with Pitch Perfect 2 was its weak central narrative. We're introduced to the Bellas right after they've had a big stage mishap. Because of this stage mishap, they've been suspended as an organization, which doesn't matter. Pretty much all the members are seniors, and the suspension is going to last the remainder of the year regardless. They formulate a deal where if they win the international competition, that the suspension will be lifted, but at that point most of them will be graduated. So I'm not sure why that deal even matters. Further, their rivals, Das Sound Machine, the German international competitors, are shown to be competent and very good. And also, the only thing they really do to antagonize the Bellas is mild trash talk and being competent. So, we go into the film not necessarily wanting Das Sound Machine to lose, and not necessarily caring if the Bellas win, so I'm not sure what our main driving force is. This is a pattern I've seen in some media where writers take for granted that the audience is going to be on the protagonist's side. We're not really given reason to like the protagonists. We're just assumed to be on their side for no real reason. And this is the case in Pitch Perfect 2. The only thing that kind of redeems it, but it also amplifies the problem, is in the final performance, the same commentator who gave them their suspension states that if the Bellas lose, they'll never be able to perform again, or something like that. Which implies that the suspension, which by definition is temporary, was actually a disbanding. What? Either the commentator is mistaken at the beginning of the film and meant disbandment when he said suspension, or he's mistaken at the end of the film because it's a suspension, it's temporary. Of course they'd be able to perform again. The other narrative gaps in the film are kind of sourced by the writer's tendency to tell rather than show. Most narratives that I consider good tend to start at the beginning, go to the end, and there's a gradual change between. Pitch Perfect 2 has these sudden kind of logical leaps. And these happen in a couple different instances in both subplots and the main plot. One example of this is in Benji and Emily's relationship. Benji likes Emily because she's attractive, and Emily likes Benji because he's kind of goofy and funny, I guess? But they're never shown to have any real in-depth conversation about common interests. They just repeatedly have superficial interactions about her being cute and him being doofus and funny. But at the end of the film, they get together, and that's fine, but you didn't really lead us from the beginning to the end. You kind of just had the characters and then they ended up together. Another example of this is Bumper and Fat Amy's relationship. Bumper is kind of shown as to be consistently interested in Fat Amy. Fat Amy appears to consistently be interested in the sex, which is fine. Throughout the course of the film, this relationship shows up multiple times, but there's not really big changes. We're not shown Fat Amy's feelings about Bumper at all, until at the very end she suddenly decides that she's in love with him, which is fine, but again, it's telling rather than showing, which again is fine, but just feels a little bit like lazy storytelling. Another example of these narrative leaps is the main plot itself. It's readily apparent to the audience that the Bellas' main problem is that they're making their routines more complex than they need to be and just need to simplify and focus on their singing. But at the end of the day, none of the Bellas ever really consciously acknowledge their problem. They started the film having the problem of having overly complex routines. In the middle of the film, they're still shown to have overly complex routines. Then we enter some passage where, admittedly, a former Bella member comes in and mentions that sometimes getting back to the basics is good. And then we have this group find their sound, whatever that means. And then at the end, they're simply shown to have uncomplicated their routines, and they're simple and streamlined and great. But none of the Bellas ever really consciously acknowledge the problems of the main plot. They never consciously state their own problems or that they're going to attempt to fix them. It just kind of happens. And again, that's fine. It's a way to tell a story. It's just feels kind of lazy. So yeah, they had a kind of weak narrative, but it was still a fun movie with great music, great characters, and laughs. At the end of the day, the fact that it's so much music felt kind of weird given that they didn't apparently have time to fully flesh out all the subplots they had. But I guess it's just supposed to be a fun movie, so sure. The one weird thing I did want to mention, because we're not really given any reason to dislike Das Sound Machine, and yet they're the antagonists, it seemed almost implicative that we were supposed to dislike them just because they were foreign. And combined that with an incredibly stereotypical Latina immigrant character, it felt a tiny bit xenophobic. Again, it wasn't a major factor, but it felt like it was kind of there just based on how they structured the narrative. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a good movie. It's a fun time. Just don't expect a good story. Again, comment below if you think I missed anything or if there's anything else you'd like to discuss. Let me know if there's any other films you'd like me to review, and I'll see you next time.